All right, what's going on, boys and girls? So we are here with another reaction video, and this particular one is a little bit different. It is by SquidtheSid, the state of Linux gaming in 2019. I have not listened to this, so I have no idea how this is, but I guess we'll find out together, shall we not? So let's roll into this and see how well SquidtheSid states Linux gaming is in 2019.
Okay, you don't need to be a hacker to use Linux. All you really need is a spare flash drive, live USB software like Rufus or Balena Etcher, and a little bit of patience. But why would you ever use Linux? For me, it can be summed up in 2 words. Windows 10. From the system bloat to start menu advertisements to force automatic security updates, Windows 10 has been a nearly endless source of frustration for me. Final straw came in fall 2018 when my hard drive got nuked by an update and I lost all my work in progress videos. That left me with 2 options: go back to Windows 7 or learn how to use Linux. And since I wanted nothing more to do with Microsoft, I chose the latter. So if you're a fellow victim of Windows 10, or if you're interested in the current state of Linux gaming, you've come to the right place. Elaborating on the earlier point of why Linux, I think it's important to examine the pragmatic and philosophical reasons involved. Regarding the former, arguably the strongest case for using Linux is that it is completely free. There are no hidden fees, advertisements, or spyware uploading your private data back to the corporate mothership. And considering that a legitimate Windows 10 license key can cost up to $200, that's quite a bit of money you could save towards games or better computer hardware. Another compelling reason to use Linux is that it leaves you alone. Cortana doesn't annoy you while setting up your desktop, and the operating system doesn't restart to update in the middle of an important task. Additionally, I think it's important to discuss the underlying moral principle behind Linux: freedom. With Windows, Microsoft controls what you can and cannot do with your computer. You cannot disable their telemetry. You cannot disable automatic updates. At any time, they can push out an update that changes your computer as they see fit, while you helplessly watch. Meanwhile, there is no central authority that dominates Linux. Any person can change the desktop experience to suit their needs, since the source code is easily accessible and freely distributed. That's why there are so many flavors of Linux around, since they all achieve different visions. Ubuntu seeks to offer a stable and user-friendly experience. Arch offers bleeding-edge software. Gentoo maximizes system performance by having you compile everything from scratch. And if the maintainer of your current distribution changes it in a way you don't like, you have dozens of alternatives to switch to. Now, with these benefits in mind, Linux does have its fair share of limitations, especially regarding gaming. Since most PC developers target Windows for their titles, Linux support is threadbare at best.
It's only threadbare depending on how you view gaming. For me personally, now this is just me personally, I don't view Linux gaming any different than I view a console gaming. I don't do the PC Master Race crap. I might joke about it, but I don't do it. Basically, it boils down to any console. If I can install Steam with on Linux, plug it into my TV or monitor or whatever, and play 6,000 plus games, I'm kind of content, because there ain't no damn console that out of the box offers 6,000 games. Just my take. And that's just Steam. We're not talking Lutris.
Most native games come from indie developers or from a few porting studios like Aspyr and Feral Interactive. As a result, we only see a small subset of titles that Windows users get. Also, given the variance in our setups, some native games can have weird issues running on specific distros. For instance, I had to symbolically link some SSL libraries to get Borderlands 2 to run, and I still have.
Yes, but you also run into those issues running on Windows. DLL issues. Do you have the right, the redistributable crap that Microsoft wants you to have? Microsoft don't sell Linux short. Yeah, it's got its problems, but Windows gaming is no better sometimes. Go to any forum or any discussion on Steam, and you will see the same issue in those forums that you would run into on Linux, as far as there being incompatibility with hardware, software, etc. So this, I'm going to say this kind of a cop-out bullshit take. I'm not saying that there isn't problems. I'm just saying that the expectation that Windows doesn't have them is kind of BS.
Haven't been able to get Company of Heroes 2 working, despite trying a myriad of workarounds. That said, these examples tend to be edge cases, since the majority of games I've tried have had no problems running. Despite there being thousands of Linux titles on Steam, even more can be played unofficially. Enter Wine, a compatibility layer that lets you run Windows applications. Now, it's not perfect, as some applications refuse to launch, and others have significant performance or stability issues. Furthermore, Wine has historically been a bit tricky to set up for the average user, as certain applications had dependencies on Windows-specific fonts and DLL files. Thankfully, Valve has streamlined a lot of this process by directly integrating Wine and related projects like DXVK and D9VK into the Steam client. For officially whitelisted titles like Dark Souls 3 and Doom 2016, no extra configuration is needed. All you need to do is install them, perform first-time setup, and play. Once you're inside these games, the experience is nearly identical to that of Windows, with there generally being a mild 5 to 10% performance impact due to Wine's or DXVK's overhead. Unfortunately, the whitelist isn't very large right now, as only a couple dozen titles have been officially greenlit. Additions to the list have also been rather infrequent since Proton's launch last year. However, if you're willing to experiment, you can enable Steam Play for any game in your library. With certain titles like Sekiro and Risk of Rain 2, that's all you need to do, and they run with near parity to Windows. However, in the many less than ideal cases that require terminal configuration, I've encountered sound cutting out, frequent crashes, hefty frame rate drops, graphical glitches, and so on. And there's the case where a game will flat out refuse to run, generally due to the included DRM or anti-cheat software. Valve is working with these developers to address this issue, but in the meantime, keep in mind that many popular competitive multiplayer titles like PUBG and Rainbow Six Siege won't work on Linux. To assist
In fairness, they're not going to work because of easy anti-cheat, which is an Epic problem. This is kind of the chicken and the egg problem. We want it to work on Linux, but the company isn't going to make the effort to make it work on Linux because the Linux market is small. So, chicken egg. Whether or not Epic actually gets its head out of its own ass, I highly doubt. So, we shall see, I guess, but to me, that is a third-party problem. It's no different than when people complain about Linux not having certain drivers for certain hardware. Yeah, because the ODM doesn't supply them. It's kind of the same way.
In this trial and error process, I'd highly recommend checking out ProtonDB, a community-curated database that lists the status of over 9,000 Steam games. It's been an invaluable tool for figuring out crashed workarounds and methods to improve performance. It's also highly useful for quickly determining if a game is borked or not. Okay, Steam is great, but what happens when you want to play a game that's on a different platform like GOG or Battle.net? Well, there are many community-made solutions to this problem, such as Play on Linux or Lutris. I only have experience with the latter, but it does an excellent job of automating a lot of the config needed for Wine, thanks to user-made scripts.
Being a long-time Linux user, Play on Linux is great. The problem is, like, things were never updated as far as the scripts. Lutris is actually more active. Lutris is also just easier to use. It's less kludgy. Yeah, so, okay, let's get on to Lutris.
Again, some games will not run due to anti-cheat or DRM. So, what does the future hold for Linux gaming? Well, Google Stadia is releasing soon and is based on Debian Linux and utilizes Vulkan for the graphics API. Even if these ports don't make their way to Steam, Vulkan support will make Wine's job a lot easier, improving compatibility and performance in these titles. If this video has gotten you interested in trying out Linux for yourself, then I'd like to make two specific recommendations. For a standard release operating system like Windows XP to Vista 7, I'd recommend checking out Pop! OS by System 76. It's based on Ubuntu, which is the distribution officially supported by Valve and most game developers. Another nice touch is that if you have NVIDIA hardware, then System 76 will include the latest drivers in an alternative download, removing the need to manually install them. For a continuously updated experience similar to Windows 10, I'd recommend checking out the rolling release distro Solus. It's built from the ground up to offer a modern and intuitive user experience without intrusive automatic updates. Important gaming software like Discord, Steam, and Lutris are also included in the Software Center by default. Regardless of which option you take, there's...
I would also like to throw in Manjaro. If you're gonna go rolling, I would recommend Manjaro. As a first-time Linux user, I would not recommend Manjaro. I would probably recommend Pop! OS as the preferred distro because it does have a lot of the perks of certain rolling distros without a lot of the headaches of the rolling distro. Just my personal.
There's an insane amount of visual customization and fine-tuning you can do. I would recommend checking out the Unix porn subreddit to see some of the amazing community-made examples if the defaults don't cut it for you. For those of you that aren't ready to give up Windows but still want to check out Linux, you can easily create a separate partition that exists in parallel to your current install. That way, you can easily have the best of both worlds by dual booting, being able to enjoy all of your existing multiplayer games on Windows, while being able to switch to Linux for productivity.
Do note the one problem with dual booting is that Microsoft and Windows, on especially Windows 10, has been known, especially lately, to bork grub significantly and be like, oh, your Linux partitions don't exist. So that is a problem. Just do note that.
Thank you all very much for watching. I'd like to give special thanks to Whitelight and Moon-Touched Moogle for giving me feedback on my script, and to the Linux Gaming subreddit for contributing ideas to this video. If you'd like to see me go more in depth on Linux, then let me know in the comments, as this project was just meant to offer a brief overview. If you want a guided tutorial, I check out Linus Tech Tips' most recent video on Linux gaming, as it does a good job of walking you through the basics.
Normally I don't recommend Linus Tech Tips for Linux related anything, but in this case you would be correct because it's not Linus talking about it.
Regarding upcoming videos, I was thinking about revisiting a game from my childhood and seeing how it holds up to my nostalgia. Spore is the primary candidate, but I was also thinking about an ensemble RTS like Age of Empires or Halo Wars. Again, let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. Stay frosty.
So, I really don't, there's not a lot up for me to rant, rave, and swear about, so overall, SquidtheSid, like, homie, your video is actually really, really good. So, a few things it's more disagreement, which is fine, but overall, like, you take a pretty pragmatic approach, so I can't rag on that. Just, there are some caveats that I think you missed, and that's okay. Like, we all miss shit. But props to you. Good video. I really don't have any ranting. Sorry, guys. Like, this is a reaction video that is not very reactionary because I don't have a lot to rant about because it's refreshing to do one of these after a while, and the first one is not ulcer-inducing. It's actually a very good video. So, you guys know what to do. Rate it, subscribe, all the stuff down below, original video, Indie Gala, Patreon, all that stuff in the description. Catch you guys on the flip side. Peace.